The heat in Israel was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that settled over the tour group as they moved through ancient streets. For Loren, it was just background noise, a constant hum beneath the anxiety and excitement of the birthright trip. She was the group's medic, a title that gave her a sense of purpose, a reason to be focused. Then she saw him. He was the group's paramedic, a Ukrainian-born Israeli named Alexei, and the world tilted slightly on its axis. He was quiet, with kind eyes that seemed to see right through the nervous tics and the carefully constructed walls she put up. There was an immediate, unspoken understanding. A magnetism. They stole moments away from the group, conversations held in broken English and earnest gestures under the starry desert sky. He didn't just listen, he heard her. When she'd have a tic, a slight jerk of her head or a soft vocalization, he wouldn't flinch or look away. He would just hold her gaze, his own calm and steady, and it was like an anchor in a lifelong storm. The 10 days felt like a lifetime and a single breath all at once. The goodbye at the airport was brutal, a tearing apart of something that had only just begun to weave itself together. She cried all the way back to New York, the hum of the airplane engine a mournful drone. This couldn't be it. It felt too real, too significant to be a simple vacation romance. The months that followed were a blur of time zones and pixelated video calls. Nights bled into mornings as they tried to bridge the 6,000 miles between them. She learned a schedule as a medic in Petah Tikva. He learned the rhythms of her life in Florida, where she had moved back in with her parents. They talked about everything and nothing, his family, her fears, their dreams for a future that seemed both impossible and inevitable. The decision to apply for the K-1 visa was a terrifying leap of faith. It was a mountain of paperwork, of intrusive questions, of doubt from friends and family who couldn't understand the depth of a connection forged in just 10 days. You barely know him, they'd say. But Loren knew. She knew the way his voice softened when he talked about his parents, the quiet strength in his hands, the unwavering support in his eyes. He was her person. The day Alexei landed at the airport in Florida was electric. Seeing him walk through the sliding glass doors, no longer a face on a screen but a solid, breathing man, made every doubt vanish. The joy was immediate, but so was the pressure. The 90-day clock started ticking the second his boots hit American soil. He moved into her parents' condo, a space already crowded with their lives and personalities. Suddenly, his world had shrunk to a single bedroom in a foreign country. He, a man who had been a first responder, saving lives and making split-second decisions, couldn't work, couldn't drive, couldn't do anything without her. He was completely dependent, and the loss of his independence was a quiet, gnawing burden. He watched American television, trying to understand the rapid-fire slang. He walked to the grocery store just to have something to do. He spent hours on the phone with his parents in Israel, his voice a low murmur of Russian, a language that felt like a secret shield in this new, confusing world. Lauren's parents, Brian and Marlene, were cautiously welcoming. They loved their daughter fiercely and wanted her happiness, but they were skeptical. Brian, in particular, watched Alexei with a protective father's eye, questioning his motives, his plans, his ability to provide. Every dinner felt like a gentle interrogation. For Loren, it was a tightrope walk between defending the man she loved and respecting the parents she adored. The pressure mounted, creating a claustrophobic atmosphere in the small condo. And beneath it all lay her secret, a ticking time bomb she was terrified to detonate, her Tourette syndrome. Alexei knew, of course. He had known since Israel. He was her biggest champion, the one who told her it didn't define her. But his parents didn't know. The thought of telling them, of being judged or misunderstood by the people whose approval she desperately craved, filled her with a paralyzing dread. "We have to tell them before the wedding," Alexei insisted one evening, his voice gentle but firm. They were sitting on the edge of her bed, the air thick with unspoken tension. "I can't," she whispered, twisting the fabric of her shorts. "What if they think I'm damaged? What if they think I shouldn't have children?" "They will love you because I love you," he said, taking her hands. And if they don't understand at first, I will make them understand. We are a team. You are not alone in this. The conversation was a recurring one, a sore spot that they kept poking. She knew he was right, but the fear was an old, familiar monster. It was the same fear that had haunted her through middle school, through first dates, through job interviews. This felt like the biggest test of all. The tension finally snapped during a joint bachelor and bachelorette party in Miami. Lauren's vision for the night was a fun, classy affair. But the party bus took an unexpected turn, ending up at a strip club. For Lauren, it was a nightmare. She watched, her insecurity flaring, as a dancer gave Alexei a lap dance. It wasn't about the dancer. It was about the feeling of being out of control, of her carefully planned night unraveling. She saw it as a betrayal, a disrespect to their impending marriage. Alexei, coming from a different culture where such things were often seen as harmless fun, was bewildered by the intensity of her reaction. The fight that erupted on the sidewalk outside the club was raw and ugly. "How could you do that?" she yelled, tears streaming down her face. "Right in front of me. Don't you respect me?" "Lauren, it was a joke," he pleaded, trying to reach for her. "It meant nothing. It is part of a party." "No, it's not a joke to me. To me, it's about our life, our marriage." It was their first major blow-up, a clash of cultural expectations and personal insecurities. They went home in stony silence, the 90-day clock feeling less like a countdown to a wedding and more like a countdown to a disaster. For a few dark days, the future felt uncertain. They circled each other in the condo, the air crackling with unspoken resentments. It took a long, tearful conversation, a painful peeling back of layers, to find their way back to each other. She explained the deep well of insecurity the incident had tapped into. He explained his feeling of being lost, of not understanding the rules of this new world. They forgave each other. It was a critical lesson in their relationship. Their love wasn't fragile. It could withstand a storm. Strengthened by this, they finally made the video call to his parents in Israel. With Alexei by her side, his hand a warm, steady presence on her back, Lauren took a deep breath and told them. She explained what Tourette syndrome was, how it affected her with involuntary movements and sounds, and how she had lived with it her whole life. She watched their faces on the screen, her heart pounding, preparing for the worst. There was a moment of silence, a beat of confusion as they processed the information through a translator. Then his mother's face softened. "You are our daughter now," she said simply, her words relayed through Alexei. "We love you." A tidal wave of relief washed over Lauren, so immense it left her breathless. The monster of fear she had carried for so long finally scurried back into the shadows. Alexei had been right. They were a team. The wedding day was a flurry of white fabric, flowers, and nervous energy. Standing under the chuppah, looking at Alexei, all the stress of the past 90 days melted away. This was real. This was forever. He was her home. They exchanged vows, his voice thick with emotion, hers trembling but clear. They broke the glass, and the cheers of their family and friends enveloped them. They were married. A year later, they traveled to Israel for a second wedding, a celebration for all the family and friends who couldn't be there the first time. It was a beautiful, full-circle moment. Standing there, in the country where they met, surrounded by his family who had accepted her so completely, Lauren felt a profound sense of peace. Life after the cameras stopped rolling was an adjustment. They moved out of her parents' condo and into their own apartment. Alexei got his green card, and with it, a piece of his identity back. He started working, first in a warehouse, then earning his forklift certification. It wasn't his passion, but it was a start. He was providing, contributing. They settled into a comfortable rhythm, a domesticity that was a welcome relief after the high drama of the K-1 process. Their fame, however, was just beginning. TLC invited them to be on 90 Day Fiancé, Pillow Talk, a spin-off where past cast members comment on new episodes. It was a perfect fit. Lounging on their bed in their pajamas, their natural chemistry and witty banter shone through. Fans fell in love with their genuine affection and humorous bickering. They weren't just a 90-day success story. They were couple goals. They became two of the most beloved figures in the entire franchise. Their journey to parenthood was fraught with its own anxieties. Loren had always been terrified that her Tourette's would make it difficult to conceive, or that she would pass it on to her children. After months of trying, the sight of a positive pregnancy test brought both ecstatic joy and overwhelming fear. The pregnancy was a new test of their partnership. Alexei was her rock, calming her fears, massaging her aching back, and building cribs with a determined focus. When their son, Shai, was born, their world was remade. Holding him for the first time, Loren felt a love so fierce it was almost painful. Alexei was a natural father, his quiet strength a perfect complement to Shai's infant energy. But the joy was soon shadowed by darkness. Loren began to struggle with postpartum depression and anxiety. It was a terrifying, isolating experience. Some days, she felt like she was drowning, unable to connect with the baby she loved so much. She was brave enough to speak about it, first to Alexei, then publicly. She wanted other mothers to know they weren't alone. Alexei stepped up in a way that solidified their bond more than any wedding vow ever could. He took overnight feedings, held her when she cried, and encouraged her to get the help she needed. He was her caregiver, her advocate, her unwavering support. They weathered that storm together, and their marriage emerged stronger, deeper, and more resilient than ever. Life became a beautiful chaos. Less than 2 years after Shai, they welcomed their second son, Asher. Suddenly, they were parents to 2 under 2. Their small apartment was overflowing with love, laughter, and diapers. They were exhausted but happy. They bought a house, a real home with a yard for the boys to run in. Alexei continued to work his way up, eventually getting a job as a paramedic, achieving the American equivalent of the career he'd had in Israel. It was a moment of immense pride for both of them. He was no longer the dependent man who had arrived in Florida with 2 suitcases. He was an American first responder, a husband, and a father. Just when they thought they had found their rhythm, life threw them another surprise. A third baby was on the way. Their daughter, Ariel, was born, completing their family. 3 kids under 3. Their home was a whirlwind of toddler energy and newborn cries. It was relentless and chaotic, but it was their chaos. They were a team, a well-oiled machine of bottle making, diaper changing, and bedtime story reading. Loren continued to be a powerful advocate, using her platform to raise awareness for Tourette syndrome and be a voice for mothers struggling with postpartum depression. One quiet evening, after all 3 children were finally asleep, Loren found Alexei on their back patio, staring up at the Florida sky. She came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head on his back. The air was warm and humid, filled with the chirping of crickets. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. He turned in her arms and looked down at her, his eyes full of a love that had deepened and matured over years of shared trials and triumphs. "I was thinking about Israel," he said, his voice a low rumble. "That first night when we talked by the wall. I knew then." "You knew what?" she murmured, closing her eyes. "That my life was changing. I just didn't know it would be this." He gestured back towards the quiet house, where their 3 children were sleeping. "I didn't know it could be this good." She smiled, a genuine, tired, and deeply contented smile. The journey had been messy, difficult, and broadcast for the world to see. It had been filled with fights on sidewalks, tearful confessions over video calls, and the immense pressure of a ticking clock. But it had all led them here, to this quiet moment of peace, to this forever they had built together, one day at a time.